What if I told you the reason you still can't understand fast English isn't your vocabulary, isn't your grammar, and isn't even your listening practice?
Wait, then what is it? Because that already sounds a little frustrating.
It's something almost no learner ever notices, and once you see it, you can't unsee it. In fact, it completely changes how you listen forever.
Okay, now I'm curious, because I've watched so many videos, listened to podcasts, even tried movies, and still, when native speakers talk fast, my brain just freezes.
Exactly. And if you're watching right now, you probably feel the same. You hear English, but it feels like noise instead of meaning.
Yes, it's like I recognize some words, but I can't connect them fast enough.
That's the illusion. You think listening is about catching words, but the real secret, the trick most learners don't know, is that fluent listeners don't actually listen word by word.
Wait, what? Then what are they listening to?
Patterns.
Patterns?
Yes. And today, in this episode of Talk Easy Daily, you're going to discover how this one shift from words to patterns can completely transform your listening ability.
Okay, I already feel like this is going to change something big, but I have to ask, why doesn't anyone teach this?
Because most people teach English like a school subject, but real listening happens in real time, and your brain doesn't have time to translate every word.
That explains so much. Sometimes I understand subtitles perfectly, but without them, I'm lost.
That's your first clue. Your reading brain is strong, but your listening brain hasn't been trained the right way.
So today, we're basically retraining how people listen?
Exactly. And here's the exciting part. You don't need more hours of practice. You just need the right method.
I love that, because honestly, a lot of people feel tired of just keep listening advice.
And that advice is incomplete, because if you repeat the wrong method, you repeat the same frustration.
That's powerful. And if you're watching right now, I want to ask you something. Have you ever felt like you're improving in English, but listening is still your weakest skill?
That's a great question. And if that's you, stay with us, because in the next few minutes, we're going to reveal the exact listening trick that advanced learners use without even realizing it.
And I'm guessing once you understand it, you'll start hearing English differently?
Not just differently, you'll start understanding faster with less effort.
Okay, now I'm really excited.
Good. But before we go deeper, quick question for you watching. When you listen to English, do you focus more on individual words or the overall meaning?
Oh, that's a good one.
Drop your answer in the comments, because your answer reveals exactly why you're struggling or improving.
And don't forget to like and subscribe to Talk Easy Daily, because this episode might completely change how you learn English.
And trust me, what we're about to uncover next is something most learners completely misunderstand.
Now I really want to know, what's the biggest mistake people make with listening?
That's exactly where we're going next. And once you see it, you'll realize why your brain has been working against you this whole time.
Okay, let's go.
Let me say something that might sound a little uncomfortable at first. Most English learners are practicing listening the wrong way.
Ouch. Okay, that sounds serious. What are they doing wrong?
They're trying to hear every word.
Wait, but isn't that the goal? Like, if I miss words, I don't understand, right?
That sounds logical, but in real-life conversations, even native speakers don't hear every single word clearly.
Really? That's surprising.
Yes. Think about this. Have you ever watched a movie in your own language and someone mumbles, but you still understand?
Oh, wow, yes. That actually happens a lot.
Exactly, because your brain isn't decoding word by word. It's predicting meaning based on patterns, context, and experience.
So when learners try to catch every word, they're basically slowing themselves down?
Not just slowing down, they're overloading their brain.
That explains that freeze feeling, right?
Yes, that exact moment when someone speaks fast and your brain just says, nope, too much.
I felt that so many times. It's like everything collapses at once.
That's because your brain is trying to do three things at the same time. Understand the sound, translate the word, and build meaning.
That sounds exhausting.
It is, and here's the truth. Fluent listeners skip one of those steps.
Wait, which one?
Translation.
Ah, so they don't think in their native language.
Exactly. They go directly from sound to meaning.
Okay, but how do you even train that?
That's where the pattern listening trick comes in.
I feel like this is the core of everything.
It is, and let me give you a simple example.
Okay, I'm ready.
Imagine someone says, "What are you going to do?"
That sounds normal.
But in real life, it often sounds like, "What you going to do?"
Oh, yes, that's exactly what I hear sometimes.
And if you're waiting to hear "what are you" separately, you'll miss it.
So the problem isn't speed, it's expectation.
Exactly. Your brain expects textbook English, but real English is compressed, connected, and reduced.
That's such a big realization.
And here's a quick test for you watching. Have you ever understood a sentence only after seeing the subtitles?
I think almost everyone will say yes.
That's because your brain recognizes patterns visually, but not yet in sound.
So we need to build sound patterns, not just vocabulary.
Exactly. Vocabulary is like ingredients. Patterns are like recipes.
Oh, I love that analogy.
You can know all the ingredients, but still not recognize the dish.
That explains why learners say, I know all these words, but I didn't understand the sentence.
Yes, because they're missing the pattern.
Okay, this is starting to click, but I feel like some people watching might be thinking, how do I actually practice this?
Great question. And before we answer that, let me challenge something most people believe.
Uh-oh, here comes a myth.
Myth. If you just listen more, your listening will improve.
That sounds like advice we hear everywhere.
And it's incomplete, because if you listen passively, your brain doesn't adapt.
So just playing English in the background won't magically fix listening?
Exactly. That's like playing music and expecting to become a musician.
Okay, that hits hard.
What you need is active pattern recognition.
That sounds more intentional.
It is, and here's a simple way to start.
I'm ready.
Instead of trying to understand everything, focus on one small sentence.
Just one?
Yes. Repeat it. Listen again. Notice how the sounds connect.
So it's more like studying the sound, not just the meaning.
Exactly. You're training your ear, not just your brain.
That feels very different from how most people learn.
Because most people chase quantity, but improvement comes from quality.
That's a powerful shift.
And here's another question for you watching. Do you usually listen once and move on, or repeat the same audio multiple times?
That's such a revealing question.
Because the real growth happens in repetition, not exposure.
I feel like people are going to rethink their entire learning strategy right now.
Good, because what we're about to explore next will show you exactly how to train your brain to hear patterns automatically.
Automatically? That sounds like the goal.
It is, and once you reach that point, fast English won't feel fast anymore.
Okay, now I really want to know how that works.
And that's exactly what we're breaking down next. Let's go deeper into something most learners never realize. Your brain is not slow. It's just trained the wrong way.
That already feels reassuring because a lot of people think, maybe I'm just bad at listening.
Exactly. But here's the truth. Your brain is incredibly powerful. The problem is, it's been trained to listen like a translator, not like a native listener.
So instead of understanding, it's decoding?
Yes, and decoding is too slow for real conversation.
That makes sense. When people speak fast, there's no time to decode every word.
Right, so your brain needs a shortcut.
And that shortcut is patterns?
Exactly. But let's make this very real with a situation.
Okay.
Imagine you're at a cafe. Someone asks you, do you want to grab something to eat?
That sounds simple, but in real life, it might sound like, do you want to grab something to eat?
Perfect. And if your brain is waiting for, do you want to, clearly, you'll miss the entire sentence.
So the issue isn't vocabulary, it's recognizing the sound shape of the sentence.
That's it. Sound shape. That's the phrase I want you to remember.
I like that. It feels more natural than words.
Because when people speak, they don't deliver words like a dictionary. They deliver sound patterns.
This is starting to change how I think about listening completely.
Good. Now here's a quick pattern interrupt for you watching. What do you think is harder to understand? A long sentence spoken slowly, or a short sentence spoken very fast?
I think most people would say the fast one.
Exactly, because speed hides patterns.
So if we slow things down and study patterns, we can handle speed later?
Yes, that's the progression most learners skip.
That explains why jumping into fast movies feels impossible sometimes.
Right, it's like trying to run before you've learned how to walk properly.
Okay, so what's the step-by-step way to train this?
Let's break it into something very practical.
I love practical.
Step 1. Choose a short audio clip, maybe 5 to 10 seconds.
That's shorter than most people expect.
Exactly, that's intentional. You want something manageable.
Okay,
Step 2. Listen once, without subtitles.
just to see what you catch?
Yes, don't panic if you understand very little.
That's important because people usually panic at that stage.
Step 3. Listen again, but this time with subtitles.
So now we connect sound with meaning.
Right, and here's the key step. Step 4. Listen again and focus on how the words connect.
So not just what was said, but how it sounded.
Exactly. Notice reductions, linking, rhythm.
That feels like a completely different skill.
It is, and this is where transformation happens.
And then repeat?
Yes, repeat until the sentence feels natural, not translated.
That's powerful. It's like you're building familiarity instead of forcing understanding.
Exactly. Familiarity creates speed.
I feel like this is where a lot of learners give up too early.
Yes, they listen once, don't understand, and move on.
Instead of staying with the same sentence long enough to absorb it.
That's the difference between exposure and training.
That line is worth remembering.
And here's something even more interesting. Your brain loves repetition when it's meaningful.
So repetition isn't boring if you're discovering patterns?
Exactly. It becomes satisfying.
That's such a mindset shift.
And let me ask you, and everyone watching, have you ever repeated a sentence so many times that suddenly it feels easy?
Yes, that moment feels amazing.
That's your brain forming a pattern.
So that's the goal, to collect these patterns?
Yes, because once you've heard enough patterns, new sentences feel familiar.
That sounds like magic, honestly.
It feels like magic, but it's actually training.
Okay, I have a question.
Go ahead.
What about accents? Because sometimes it's not just speed, it's different accents that make listening hard.
Great question. And here's the surprising truth. If you train patterns properly, accents become easier too.
Really?
Yes, because patterns exist across accents. The sounds may change slightly, but the structure stays similar.
So instead of memorizing accents, we focus on deeper listening patterns.
Exactly. You're training flexibility.
That's such a relief, because accents can feel overwhelming.
And here's a quick myth versus reality moment.
I'm ready.
Myth. You need to understand every accent to be fluent.
That sounds stressful already.
Reality. You need strong pattern recognition. Accents become easier naturally over time.
That feels much more achievable.
And if you're still watching right now, here's a quick challenge. Next time you listen to English, don't try to catch every word.
Instead,
Ask yourself, what pattern do I recognize?
that's such a powerful question.
Because the moment you shift that focus, everything changes.
I feel like viewers are going to start noticing things they've never noticed before.
Exactly. And what we're about to explore next will take this even deeper.
Deeper than patterns?
Yes, because there's another layer. One that explains why some learners improve fast and others stay stuck for years.
Okay, now I really need to hear this.
And trust me, once you understand this next idea, you'll never practice listening the same way again. Let me introduce you to the second hidden layer of listening. And honestly, this is where everything starts to separate average learners from advanced ones.
Okay, I'm ready, because I feel like we've already uncovered a lot.
We have, but this next idea explains why some people improve quickly while others stay stuck for years.
That sounds important.
It is, and here it is. Advanced listeners don't just recognize patterns, they predict them.
Predict? Like, guess what's coming next?
Exactly, but not randomly. It's based on experience with patterns.
So their brain is already one step ahead?
Yes, and that's why fast English doesn't feel fast to them.
Wait, that's huge. So they're not reacting, they're anticipating.
Perfectly said.
That changes everything, because most learners are just trying to keep up.
Right, and if you're always trying to catch up, you'll always feel behind.
That explains that constant feeling of, I'm late, I missed it.
Exactly, but when you start predicting, your brain relaxes.
Because it's not processing everything from zero?
Yes, it's filling in the gaps automatically.
Okay, can you give an example? Because I want to really understand this.
Of course. Imagine I say, I was gonna call you, but...
My brain already expects something like, I forgot, or I got busy.
Exactly. You didn't wait for every word. You predicted the direction.
That's true. I didn't even notice I was doing that.
That's how native level listening works.
So prediction is happening all the time?
Constantly. And here's a powerful question for you watching. When you listen to English, are you waiting for meaning or expecting it?
Wow, that's a deep question.
Because that difference changes everything.
I feel like most people are waiting.
Yes, and waiting creates delay.
So how do we train prediction?
Great question. And this is where things get really interesting.
I'm ready.
You train prediction by combining three things: patterns, context, and repetition.
Okay, break that down for me.
Patterns, we already talked about. The more patterns you know, the more your brain recognizes.
Right.
Context? This means understanding the situation.
Like knowing if people are talking about work, food, or travel?
Exactly. Context now is possibilities.
So your brain doesn't consider every possible meaning, just the likely ones.
Yes, that's what makes listening faster.
In repetition?
Repetition builds confidence in those predictions.
So the more you hear something, the faster you expect it next time.
Exactly.
This is starting to feel like training your intuition.
That's a perfect way to describe it.
And I think this is where learners underestimate themselves. They think listening is about effort, but it's actually about familiarity.
Yes, effort gets you started. Familiarity makes it automatic.
That line is powerful.
And here's a quick pattern interrupt. Most people think fast speakers are the problem.
But they're not?
No, the real problem is unfamiliar patterns.
That makes so much sense.
Because if the pattern is familiar, even fast speech feels slow.
That's such a shift in perspective.
And if you're watching right now, think about this. Have you ever heard a phrase many times, and suddenly one day you understand it instantly?
Yes, that moment feels like a breakthrough.
That's prediction being activated.
So improvement isn't gradual, it sometimes feels sudden.
Exactly, because your brain reaches a threshold.
That's encouraging. It means progress is happening even if you don't feel it.
Yes, you're building patterns in the background.
Okay, but I have a concern.
Go ahead.
What if someone says something completely unexpected?
Great question. And here's the answer. Your brain still uses patterns, but it adjusts quickly.
So prediction doesn't mean being rigid?
Exactly.
It means being flexible with direction.
That's interesting.
Think of it like driving. You expect the road to continue, but you can still turn if needed.
That's a great analogy.
And this is why advanced listeners seem so comfortable.
Because they're not panicking when they miss something.
Yes, they trust the pattern.
That's a big difference from beginners.
Exactly. Beginners try to control everything. Advanced listeners allow flow.
That word flow feels important.
It is, because real listening isn't control. It's flow with understanding.
I feel like this is something viewers need to hear again.
Let me say it clearly. If you try to control every word, you lose the sentence.
That's powerful.
But if you follow the pattern, the sentence reveals itself.
That's almost poetic.
And completely practical.
Okay, I have to ask something the viewers are probably thinking.
Go ahead.
How long does it take to develop this prediction ability?
Honest answer?
Always.
It depends on how you practice.
Fair enough.
If you practice passively, it can take years.
And if you practice actively with patterns?
You can start seeing results in weeks.
That's motivating.
But consistency is key.
Of course.
And here's something important. Don't measure progress by how much you understand.
Then how should we measure it?
Measure how comfortable you feel while listening.
That's interesting.
Because comfort means your brain is predicting.
That's such a different way to track improvement.
And a much more accurate one.
I feel like people are going to listen differently starting today.
That's the goal.
And if you're still watching, here's a challenge. Next time you listen, try to predict the next phrase before it's spoken.
Even if you're wrong, you're training your brain.
And that's what matters.
Exactly.
Okay, I'm curious. What's the next level after prediction?
I'm glad you asked, because what we're about to explore next is where listening becomes effortless.
Effortless? That sounds like the dream.
It is, and it's closer than you think. Let's talk about the level everyone dreams about. When listening stops feeling like work and starts feeling natural.
That honestly sounds impossible for a lot of learners.
It feels impossible until you understand what's really happening.
Okay, I'm listening.
Effortless listening isn't about understanding everything perfectly.
Wait, really?
Yes, that's actually the biggest misconception.
So even advanced listeners don't understand 100%?
Exactly. They understand enough, and their brain fills in the rest.
That sounds like confidence more than skill.
It's both. Skill creates confidence. Confidence allows flow.
So this is like the final stage, where everything connects?
Yes, and here's the key idea. Effortless listening comes from trusting incomplete information.
That sounds scary.
It does at first, because most learners are trained to be accurate, not fluent.
That's true. We're taught to be correct, not comfortable.
Exactly. But real conversations don't wait for perfect understanding.
So if you hesitate too much, you fall behind.
Yes, and once you fall behind, your brain panics.
That panic feeling, I know it well.
Everyone does. But here's the shift. Advanced listeners don't panic when they miss something.
What do they do instead?
They keep going.
Just continue listening?
Yes, because they trust that the next part will clarify the meaning.
That's such a different mindset.
And that mindset is everything.
I feel like a lot of viewers are thinking, but what if I miss something important?
Great question. And here's the truth. You will miss things.
That's honest.
But missing a few words doesn't mean missing the message.
That's comforting.
Think about this. Have you ever walked into a conversation late, but still understood what people were talking about?
Yes, that happens all the time.
That's your brain using context and patterns.
So we already have this ability, just not in English yet.
Exactly. You're not learning a new skill. You're transferring an existing one.
That makes it feel much more achievable.
And here's a quick challenge for you watching. Next time you miss a word, don't rewind immediately.
Oh, that's hard.
It is. But instead, keep listening and see if the meaning becomes clear.
That's training trust.
Exactly.
I feel like this one habit alone could change everything.
It can, because constant rewinding breaks your listening flow.
And real conversations don't have a rewind button.
Exactly.
Okay, I want to bring up something real.
Go ahead.
Sometimes when I listen, I understand the beginning, then I miss something, and after that, I understand nothing.
That's the domino effect.
Domino effect?
Yes. One missed word creates confusion, confusion creates stress, and stress blocks understanding.
That's exactly what it feels like.
So the solution isn't catching the missed word, it's preventing the stress.
That's such an unexpected answer.
Because listening is not just a language skill, it's a mental state.
That's deep.
Calm brain, better listening. Stressed brain, blocked listening.
That explains why sometimes I understand more when I'm relaxed.
Exactly. Your brain processes faster when it's not under pressure.
So improving listening isn't just about practice, it's also about mindset.
Yes, and this is where most learners overlook something important.
What's that?
They train their ears, but ignore their emotional response.
That's so true.
But emotion directly affects comprehension.
So if you feel nervous, your listening gets worse.
Exactly.
That's something people need to hear.
And if you're watching right now, ask yourself, when you listen to English, do you feel curious or stressed?
That question alone might change how someone practices.
Because curiosity opens your brain, stress closes it.
That's powerful.
And here's a quick pattern interrupt. Most people think they need more difficult content to improve.
But I'm guessing that's not the best approach.
Not always. If content is too difficult, your brain goes into survival mode.
And stops learning effectively.
Exactly. The best learning happens just slightly above your comfort zone.
That sweet spot.
Yes, challenging, but not overwhelming.
I feel like a lot of people jump too far ahead.
And then blame themselves when they don't understand.
That's so relatable.
So here's a simple rule. If you feel lost for more than 10 seconds, the content might be too hard.
That's a very practical guideline.
And adjusting difficulty is not weakness, it's strategy.
I love that.
Because smart learners don't just work hard, they work right.
That's a line people should remember.
And now we're reaching a really interesting point.
I can feel that.
Because everything we've talked about, patterns, prediction, trust, mindset, it all leads to one final shift.
There's more?
Yes, and this is where listening turns into something almost automatic.
Okay, now I'm really curious.
In the next part, we're going to explore real-life examples and stories that show exactly how this transformation happens.
That's going to make everything even clearer.
And if you've made it this far, you're already ahead of most learners.
So don't stop now.
Because the next part might be the moment where everything finally clicks for you. Let me tell you a story that might feel very familiar.
I love stories because that's usually where things finally click.
Exactly. So imagine this. You've been learning English for months, maybe even years. You know grammar, you know vocabulary, you can read pretty well.
That already sounds like a lot of people watching right now.
But then you open a video. A native speaker starts talking.
And suddenly, everything falls apart.
Yes. You catch a few words, maybe the first sentence, and then it's like your brain just gives up.
And you think, why is this so hard? I studied this.
Exactly. Now here's the interesting part. This exact situation happened to one of my students.
Okay, I'm listening.
He told me, Speaker 1, I understand English, but I can't understand English.
That sounds confusing, but also very relatable.
And I asked him something simple. I said, when you listen, what are you trying to do?
What did he say?
He said, I try to catch every word.
Ah, the mistake we talked about earlier.
Exactly. So I gave him a challenge.
I'm curious.
I told him, for the next 7 days, don't try to understand everything.
That must have felt uncomfortable.
Very. But I added something important. I said, instead, listen for patterns and guess the meaning.
So he had to trust the process.
Yes. And on day 3, something interesting happened.
What?
He said, I didn't understand every word, but I understood the conversation.
That's a huge shift.
Exactly. And by day 7, he told me something I'll never forget.
Now I really want to hear this.
He said, for the first time, English didn't feel like a puzzle. It felt like a story.
Wow, that's powerful.
And that's the transformation we're talking about.
From decoding to experiencing.
Exactly.
I feel like a lot of viewers are still stuck in puzzle mode.
Yes. And if that's you, here's a question. When you listen, does it feel like solving a problem or following a story?
That question alone might reveal everything.
Because listening should feel like flow, not struggle.
Okay, do you have another example? Because I feel like stories make this very real.
Of course. Let me tell you about another learner.
I'm ready.
She loved watching TV shows in English, but she always used subtitles.
That's very common.
One day, she decided to try without subtitles.
Brave move.
For the first 5 minutes, she understood almost nothing.
That's discouraging.
Very. And her first instinct was to turn subtitles back on.
I would probably do the same.
But instead, she remembered one rule.
Which one?
Don't chase every word. Follow the situation.
That's such a key idea.
So she focused on context. Who's speaking? What's happening? The emotions.
And what happened?
Slowly, she started understanding the scene, even as she missed words.
That's incredible.
And here's the surprising part. After a few episodes, she didn't need subtitles as much.
So her brain adapted?
Exactly, because she trained it to look for meaning, not perfection.
That's such a different goal.
And here's a quick moment for you watching. Have you ever relied so much on subtitles that you feel lost without them?
I think many people will say yes.
Then try this. Use subtitles as a tool, not a crutch.
Meaning?
Watch once without subtitles, then watch again with them.
So subtitles confirm understanding, not replace listening.
Exactly.
That's a powerful strategy.
And here's one more story. This one is short, but important.
Okay.
A learner once told me, I can understand my teacher perfectly, but not real conversations.
That's so common.
And I asked him, why do you think that is?
What did he say?
He said, because my teacher speaks clearly.
That makes sense.
But here's what I told him. Your teacher speaks clearly, but real English is messy.
Messy?
Yes, words connect, sounds disappear, sentences flow.
That's true.
So I gave him a new habit.
What was it?
Listen to real conversations, even if they feel difficult.
That sounds challenging.
It is, but here's the key. Don't try to understand everything. Just get used to the sound.
So it's like building tolerance?
Exactly. And after a few weeks, he said something interesting.
Let me guess. It got easier?
Yes. He said, at first it sounded like noise, but now it sounds like English.
That sentence says everything.
Because that's the moment your brain starts recognizing patterns naturally.
I feel like this is the turning point for most learners.
It is.
And if you're watching right now, I want to ask you something. What does English sound like to you today? Noise or meaning?
That question matters.
Because your answer shows where you are in the journey.
And more importantly, where you can go.
Okay, I feel like everything is coming together now.
Yes, but we're not done yet.
There's still more?
Yes, because in the next part, we're going to go deeper into advanced insights, things that will help you accelerate your progress even more.
Faster improvement? I'm in.
And this next part might completely change how you practice every single day.
Then let's not wait.
Now we're stepping into the part that most learners never reach, not because it's too difficult, but because no one explains it clearly.
That sounds intriguing. What is it?
It's the idea that listening improvement is not linear, it's layered.
Layered? What do you mean by that?
Most people think, if I practice more, I'll improve step by step.
That sounds reasonable.
But in reality, listening develops in layers that stack on top of each other.
So it's not just gradual progress?
Exactly. It's more like invisible growth followed by sudden breakthroughs.
That actually explains something. Sometimes I feel stuck for weeks, and then suddenly things feel easier.
That's the layering effect.
So what are these layers?
Great question. Let's break them down in a simple way.
I'm ready.
Layer 1 is sound recognition.
That's just hearing the sounds clearly?
Yes, at this stage, your brain is learning to separate English sounds.
That seems basic, but actually very important.
It is. Without this layer, everything else becomes harder.
Okay, what's next?
Layer 2 is pattern familiarity.
That's what we talked about earlier, recognizing common phrases?
Exactly. This is where your brain starts grouping sounds into meaningful chunks.
So instead of hearing 5 words, you hear one pattern.
Perfect.
And that speeds things up.
Yes. Now layer 3 is where things get interesting. Prediction.
Anticipating what comes next.
Right. This is where listening becomes smoother.
Because you're not starting from 0 every time.
Exactly.
And the final layer?
Layer 4 is automatic understanding.
That sounds like the goal.
It is. This is where you don't consciously think, you just understand.
Like in your native language.
Exactly.
Okay, this framework makes everything feel clearer.
Good. But here's the important part. Most learners try to jump to layer 4.
Without building the earlier layers properly.
Yes. And that's why they feel stuck.
That's such a clear explanation.
And here's a quick question for you watching. Which layer do you think you're in right now?
That's a powerful reflection.
Because once you know your layer, you know what to focus on.
That makes learning much more efficient.
Exactly.
Okay, I want something practical again.
Of course.
What's one advanced technique people can start using today?
I'll give you one that's extremely powerful, but rarely used correctly.
Now I'm really curious.
It's called shadow listening.
I've heard of shadowing, but I'm not sure how it works for listening.
Most people think shadowing is about speaking.
Repeating after the speaker, right?
Yes, but here's the deeper version. Shadow listening trains your brain to synchronize with English rhythm.
That sounds advanced.
It is, but let's simplify it.
Please.
You play a short audio, and you try to repeat it at the same time as the speaker.
At the same time? That sounds hard.
It is at first, but that's the point.
Why does that help?
Because it forces your brain to process sound in real time.
So there's no time to translate.
Exactly. You're training speed and pattern recognition together.
That sounds incredibly effective.
It is, and here's the key. Don't worry about being perfect.
Just stay with the rhythm?
Yes, follow the flow, not the accuracy.
That's a very different approach.
And if you're watching right now, Try this for just 5 minutes a day.
That's manageable.
You'll start noticing changes faster than you expect.
Okay, I have another question.
Go ahead.
What about people who say, I understand when I'm alone, but not in real conversations?
Great point. And here's why that happens.
I'm listening.
Real conversations are unpredictable.
That's true.
There's no pause, no rewind, no control.
So your brain feels pressure.
Exactly. And pressure reduces performance.
So how do we fix that?
You simulate real listening conditions.
Meaning,
Listen without pausing. No rewinding. Just keep going.
that sounds intense.
It is, but it builds resilience.
So your brain learns to stay calm even when it misses something.
Exactly.
That's such an important skill
And here's a quick pattern interrupt. Most learners avoid difficulty,
because it feels uncomfortable.
but controlled difficulty is where growth happens.
That's a mindset shift.
Yes, not too easy, not too hard.
That balance again.
Exactly.
I feel like this entire episode is changing how people think about listening.
That's the goal.
And if you're still here, you're not just learning English, you're learning how to learn.
That's the real transformation.
Okay, I think we're getting close to the end, right?
Yes, and in the next part, we're going to bring everything together.
A full recap?
Yes, but not just a summary. A clear roadmap you can actually follow.
That's exactly what people need.
And we'll end with something powerful, so you leave this episode with clarity and motivation.
Then don't go anywhere, because the final part might be the most important one.
Let's bring everything together, because right now, you're not the same listener you were at the beginning of this episode.
That's true. I feel like I understand listening in a completely different way now.
And that's exactly the goal. Not just more knowledge, but a new perspective.
So where do we start with the recap?
Let's start with the biggest shift, the one most learners never make.
Listening is not about hearing every word.
It's about recognizing patterns.
That idea alone changes everything.
Because the moment you stop chasing individual words, your brain finally has space to understand meaning.
And that reduces stress immediately.
Exactly. Now the second key idea, prediction.
Don't wait for meaning. Expect it.
Yes, train your brain to anticipate what's coming next.
That makes listening faster and smoother.
And more natural.
Then we talked about something really important. Trust.
Trusting incomplete information.
That was hard to accept at first.
But essential. Because real conversations don't give you perfect clarity.
So instead of stopping when you miss something, you keep going.
Exactly. And that prevents the domino effect.
That one hit me because I've experienced that so many times.
Most learners have.
Then we explored mindset.
Yes, calm brain, better listening.
Stress blocks understanding.
And curiosity improves it.
That's such a powerful takeaway.
And finally, we talked about layers.
Sound recognition, pattern familiarity, prediction, and automatic understanding.
Exactly. And knowing your layer helps you practice smarter.
Not just harder.
Now let's turn all of this into a simple roadmap.
I love this part.
Step 1, choose short audio.
Keep it manageable,
Step 2, listen without subtitles.
even if you understand very little.
Step 3, listen again with subtitles.
Connect sound and meaning.
Step 4, focus on patterns, not words.
Notice how sounds connect,
Step 5, repeat until it feels natural.
not translated.
Step 6, practice prediction.
Guess what comes next?
Step 7, listen without stopping.
Build flow and confidence,
And Step 8, stay consistent.
because consistency builds familiarity.
And familiarity builds speed.
That roadmap feels clear and actionable,
Good, because clarity leads to action.
and action leads to results.
Now let me say something directly to you watching.
This is important.
If you've ever felt like your listening will never improve,
Or that you're just not good at English.
that's not true.
Not at all.
You were simply using the wrong approach.
And now you have the right one.
Exactly. And if you apply even 50% of what we shared today,
You'll start noticing changes.
not instantly, but steadily,
And then, suddenly,
that breakthrough moment,
where English stops sounding like noise,
and starts sounding like meaning.
that's the moment we're working toward.
And you're closer than you think.
Much closer.
Now here's something important. Don't keep this to yourself,
Yes, share this with someone who's struggling with listening.
because this might be the explanation they've been missing.
And if this episode helped you even a little,
Hit the like button so more learners can find it.
and subscribe to Talk Easy Daily.
Because we're here to make English feel easier, every single day.
Also, we'd love to hear from you.
Yes, comment below and tell us.
What's the hardest part of listening for you right now?
Your answer might help someone else too.
And we read your comments.
Always.
Okay, one last question before we go.
Go ahead.
If someone starts today, when will they feel a difference?
If they practice the right way,
Yes,
they'll feel a shift in awareness immediately.
that I hear things differently feeling?
Exactly. And within a few weeks, real improvement.
That's motivating.
But only if they stay consistent.
That's always the key.
Always.
All right, I think this is the moment.
Yes.
Your listening journey is about to change.
And it starts with one decision.
To stop chasing words.
And start hearing patterns.
We'll see you in the next episode.
Right here on Talk Easy Daily.
Don't miss it.
All right. Now that we've completed the full episode, this is where we shift from learning to positioning this video for massive impact.
You mean the part most people completely ignore, but makes all the difference?
Exactly. Because even the best content needs the right packaging to reach people.
I'm excited for this part. It feels like the behind-the-scenes secret.
It is. And if you're watching right now, this will also help you understand why certain videos go viral.
Okay, let's start.
First, voice direction.
That's for AI or narration, right?
Yes, and for Talk Easy Daily, the tone is everything.
So how should speaker 1 and speaker 2 sound?
Let's define it clearly. Calm, confident, slightly slow-paced, warm authority, strategic pauses before key insights.
And speaker 2?
Curious, expressive, slightly faster energy, emotional reactions that feel real, not exaggerated.
So it feels like a real conversation, not a script.
Exactly. That's what keeps people watching.
Okay, what's next?
Titles. This is critical.
Because if the title doesn't hook, no one clicks.
Exactly. Here are 5 high CTR title options for this episode.